Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we've got an early impression on another indie fragrance. And I just did a fragrance review the other day on Ensar EO #1. Probably one of my favorite Ensar fragrances I've had a chance to smell so far. Along with Tiger Lust. Those are my two favorite Ensars. And so I've been doing some indie house videos, and I want to keep the trend going because I'm really enjoying discovering more from the houses that are kind of top of the food chain in the indie world. Bortnikoff, Arise Ladore, Ensar Oud. So today we are going to the house of Dmitry Bortnikoff. And this is a fragrance that actually came out in two parts. It was originally released, I think, in 2018. And then there was a second round, went through some sort of a reformulation in 2020. The name of the fragrance is called Ruh Exquise. Ruh Exquise, I'm sure I probably butchered that, but close enough for government work. So this was sent to me by Scott from Germany. Thank you, Scott. I did an unboxing on my live the other day. It was like a 3-hour unboxing live stream. It is cold as hell in Texas, by the way. If you're wondering why I'm in a jacket, it is, I don't know, 20 outside. There's ice all over the road. School's closed down for the little one. So it's one of those kind of days. And let me tell you something. This fragrance has met today beautifully. It's even cold in my office where I'm working. And I have been wearing this as my scent of the day. Keep in mind, this is just an early impression, but I've got a 8-hour dry down here on my left hand, and I have a 4-hour dry down here on my right hand. And so I want to take you to the scent, through the scent, okay? Because this is a special Bortnikoff fragrance. This is maybe my favorite Bortnikoff that I've smelled that I don't own so far. This and maybe the tobacco one are my two favorites. Tabac Doré. Those are the two that I would buy if money was no issue and I could just buy everything. I would own this one we're going to talk about today and Tabac Doré. So let me kind of take you through the scent profile. So Ruh Exquise basically opens up with this golden hue of champaka. And champaka is probably one of the most, I would say, outside of like champaka or champa attar, which Arise Ladore sent me a couple samples of his attars. It was the Indian attar collection that he did. It was like, tuba attar. One of them was called champaka attar, I believe, or champa attar. I can't remember exactly which, but it was basically champaka and sandalwood. If you want to smell what real champaka and sandalwood smells like, that's one of the best fragrances to smell. But as far as the champaka note itself, it's a note. Well, first of all, the ingredient, the essential oil itself, is extremely expensive, number one. So you see it very often in just normal perfume, if you will. And here, Dmitry Bortnikoff basically makes what I've heard some describe as a chocolate oud fragrance. This is not just a chocolate oud fragrance to me, or chocolate and oud is kind of a cop-out way, I would say, to describe Ruh Exquise, because it does have cacao and it does have oud, but Dmitry Bortnikoff focuses so much on the floral aspect. He does florals. I think it's probably his greatest strength, in my opinion, is the way that he does the florals. They are unique, different. He really steps outside of the norms. He steps outside of the circle of the way that florals are normally used, I would say, in perfume. And so if you've ever seen the color of a champaka flower, it has this color like a sunrise. Okay, so it has this yellow floral. There's different types of champakas, I understand, but if you just look up regular champaka, it's going to have this yellowish, sunrise color. And imagine the sun right before it peaks over the horizon. You know how it has that golden hue, if you will, right? And the golden rays of warmth with spices and animalic ouds is basically the way that I would describe the fragrance, with the chocolate remaining in the background. The cacao is there, but I've heard people describe this fragrance as maybe having multiple layers. There's the face that the fragrance put forward, and there's the stuff underneath in the back. And there's some truth to that. But to me, it's not a chocolate oud first. It's a champaka flower with Dimitri's signature cardamom. When you first spray this, you're going to get that signature Dmitri Bortnikoff cardamom that you've smelled in many of his fragrances if you know his work, okay? And the champaka flower kind of sits at the centerpiece of this creation, at least for the first, I would say, 4 to 6 hours, okay? And then once you get past the 6-hour mark, it really starts to go heavier into the base notes, the resins, the ambergris, and stuff like that. We'll talk about that later. But so imagine the amped up cardamom, that Dmitri Bortnikoff signature, and it's beautifully executed here. Within the first 5 minutes, I mean, you will know you're smelling a Dmitri Bortnikoff. You may be a little bit shocked at first. You know, it may kind of throw you off the trail a bit, but within 5 or 10 minutes, there's no doubt you're smelling Dmitri Bortnikoff's work, okay? And Dmitri Bortnikoff has this way with florals, okay? Like I said, it's unique. And this is a reference champaka perfume for me, a champaka flower perfume. One of the best I've ever smelled, hands down, right there, just out in the open. If you want to get an idea of the champaka flower and, you know, such a unique iteration of the champaka flower, you should try to get your nose on Exquise. And what's interesting about the champaka, or what's interesting about this fragrance, I should say, is how it kind of goes in every single accord of the champaka flower. You get bits and pieces of exactly what you would expect a champaka perfume to be. You get this spicy texture, okay? And spicy textured outside of just the cardamom. You get this spicy texture, which I'm guessing comes from the champaka, because champaka flower doesn't smell like a rose or a jasmine. It has a very unique smell. And many people say that it has this tea-like texture. So imagine this dry tea, okay? So it has this spicy tea texture is what the champaka flower usually smells like. And there's many characteristics that the champaka puts forward. Imagine you're smelling star anise, but in a flower, okay? So imagine that star anise profile, but in a floral form with spices and that tea accord, and that'll kind of get you in the ballpark. But then you have to keep in the back of your mind always that golden sunrise. Ruh Khus to me gives off this golden hue, okay? And it's constantly there. That golden hue has to be kept in the forefront. While we're talking about all these other ingredients, the golden hue is at the center of the fragrance creation. And it's really, really beautiful. It lasts forever, by the way. I can still smell the spray from this morning. Clear as day, I can still smell the spray. So then this is 8 hours into the dry down. The stuff lasts forever. And champaka also has this fruity, of course floral, but fruity mixed with the floral kind of plays into it, if you will. So there's some fruity floral aspect that tends to come out. And as it continues into the dry down, it kind of turns into this waxy, smoky, very camphor-like. There's a camphorous, if that's a word. There's this camphorous feeling to the perfume. And you know, there's something actually very green. And I noticed there's a note of champaka leaf. Now, I don't know what champaka leaf smells like, but the only reason I know what champaka smells like is because of the, you know, champa attar and a couple other things with champaka that I've smelled before. But the champaka leaf, I'm completely ignorant on. I can't say I know anything about what champaka leaf smells like, but there is this green touch that you'll pick up. Maybe slightly minty. I'm guessing that's the champaka leaf, but I honestly don't know. That would be my guess because it's listed as a note, okay? And the fragrance dries more and more as the hours tick by. You'll begin to notice that that jasmine begins to make an appearance. But what's so interesting about the way that the jasmine operates in this fragrance is as the jasmine is rising, so is the oud. Okay, and it's almost like the oud works as this chauffeur. It navigates the jasmine through the potholes. It navigates the jasmine kind of away from the bad parts of the city, and it gets it to its destination safe and without going through the rough part of town, right? The oud almost acts as this chauffeur to me. And it avoids the real indolic facets of jasmine. Like if you don't like that really indolic, animalic, white floral jasmine, if you're someone like Rich Mitch and you don't like white florals, don't worry about seeing jasmine sambac and jasmine auriculatum in here, which I think is the Egyptian jasmine. Don't worry about seeing those two listed, because along with the jasmine, that oud almost, you know, it is its bodyguard. The oud is the jasmine's bodyguard. Takes it through the streets, keeps it safe, and it never gets to that white indolic factor of jasmine that many people, including me, don't really care for in a perfume, right? What you will notice, though, is that sun that I mentioned in the previous paragraph that always stays kind of at the heart of the composition, this warmth sunrise, begins to turn almost slightly honey. Imagine that you are seeing the sun in the background and it gives you this feeling of honey in your mind, right? And this warm honey, also imagine that it wasn't just like the honey that you drizzle on toast or something, but the honey itself was powdery. That's what the heart of the fragrance smells like to me, along with everything else that's listed, which we should go through the note listing. I haven't gone through that with you. But before I get off of this powdery honey vibe, imagine that there are specks of powder peeking through the honey. So it's not just honeyed sun, honeyed warmth that the champaka brings. There's also these kind of specks peeking through of powder, and those are the only places the powder can get through. So it's mostly that golden honey hue. Specks of powder are just kind of slowly seeping through the landscape, if you will. That's the scent in my mind. That's how I kind of visualize it. And let me go through the note listing. Maybe that'll kind of give you an idea of the scent itself. So the top is bergamot, neroli, and cardamom. The heart is champaka flower, champaka leaf, jasmine sambac, jasmine auriculatum, cedar, cacao, clove, camphor, nagarmotha, myrrh. Base is Vietnamese oud, Indonesian oud, styrax, tolu balsam, and ambergris. Okay, so the image in your head should be of that golden sun, right? You know what came to my head actually as I was thinking about this fragrance today? What came to my head as I was thinking about this fragrance today is, have you ever seen those political ads for like candidates? And it happens on both sides of the aisle, so I'm not singling anyone out. But you ever seen how they're like looking off to the sunset, and or their picture is like superimposed high up in the sky, and they're kind of, you know, looking at the sun, but down below them you can see like the background as if you're, you know, as if you're in an airplane or something. And what's in the background all the time? There's always this plentiful fields of wheat, you know, to signify like the horn of plenty. There's going to be food for everyone. Everyone will be given everything they need if you just elect me, right? That's the new political premise. Give away everything, promise everything, and just elect me, and then, you know, back out on the promises later, right? So that idea of this political ad where the wheat is in the background, you probably know what I'm talking about, but substitute for the wheat tobacco. So imagine you've got this like golden tobacco feel. And as the fragrance continues to dry, even though there's no tobacco listed, I get this hint of like this golden blonde tobacco in Le Exquise. And, you know, the golden sun, the fields of wheat in background, which are kind of the tobacco really in my head. That's how I kind of imagine it. And the bit that kind of takes the perfume to the next level, that really made me say, you know what? I think this is probably one of Dmitry Bortnikoff's best works. Definitely one of the best works I don't own a full bottle of. Is this the way that the woods and the Nagarmotha are mixed with the oud. And there is this animalic facet to it. You can't get away from it. The oud is slightly animalic. There's multiple types of oud that I mentioned. Now, I don't know the oud well enough to really, I don't know it well enough to comment on the differences between Vietnamese oud and Indonesian oud. If you know me, you know that I'm not the biggest oud head, if you will. I like oud, but I don't, you know, I don't love it the way that some people are oud heads. And so let me see if I can just see what Dmitry Bortnikoff has to say about Exquise. Here we go. So it says, spring in Paris has almost become summer today. The shades of evening begin to descend. You sit in a cafe in the city center and look at the Seine. The sun goes down and the colors of the day mix with the purple sky. The familiar outlines of objects are faded by pastel tones. I like the pastel tones bit. That's very true. Your eyes rest and your feelings become stronger. The waiter brings you a cup of cacao and a dessert. Dusky air cools your face and you feel the richness of the scents brighter than ever before. The beverage, the food, and the bouquet of flowers nearby. It is Exquise. The fragrance starts with the soft mix of cardamom and citruses. In a moment, you get a whirlpool of spicy notes of cacao, clove, and myrrh. The heart of the fragrance beats with floral notes of exotic champaca and jasmine. Indonesian and Vietnamese oud, tolu balsam, and delicate white amber are warming the beautiful base of the fragrance. So this sells for 50 mils for $350, okay? So, and I think it's part of the second collection that he put out. So, Exquise, very interesting fragrance because, you know, the Nagarmotha that indie houses put out, like if you've ever smelled, Nagarmotha is another word for cypriol. I did an entire video on cypriol if you want to learn about what it is, what fragrances in my collection use that note, that kind of thing. You can go check it out. Check out that This Is Not a Top 10 cypriol video. And it smells different when I smell Nagarmotha in things like Arise Ladore's work or Bortnikoff's work versus, you know, if you've ever smelled it in Frederic Mall's Promise or Amouage's Silver Oud or Opus 6 or something like that. Those are big cypriol fragrances. Different vibes. You get different feelings. But what remains is the smokiness. There is this woody oud dry down that adds to this base that feels very, it feels